Hello everyone, my name is Aura and welcome to the 16th devlog of Mortal Glory 2, a turn-based gladiator roguelike. This week I decided to start with a new skill I had been thinking about in my head for a while now, and that was the lightning skill. So basically the main gist behind this skill will be that it's electricity and it will spread through liquids. I first added the logic for it to actually spread from unit to unit when you have some liquid tiles, meaning water or blood currently on the floor. And after all that was in place, then I also added this lightning beam animation. Side note, I actually made this beam animation myself. It wasn't too hard actually. It's just this like very hastily drawn pixel line that is skewed, and then I added a bunch of brightness and color to it, so it looks like it's glowing and kind of lightning like. Here you can see it demonstrated in its full glory, the final implementation. And yeah, I think it's a pretty cool skill to use. Then of course later I will have to test it out, how it actually compares to other skills in actual gameplay situations, how strong it is and stuff like that. But yeah, overall I think a very satisfying skill. Then next I decided I wanted to replace my boring background on the map scene where the units are traveling. So basically I had two main alternative ideas in my head. So number one, kind of like this landscape. So for example, green pastures and fields and stuff like that. And so it's like kind of more realistic map like. You will travel there, maybe there are towns you will travel to. And then my second alternative was this like more parchment map, kind of like more light colors and not so realistic. My first idea was to create this gradient noise shader thing myself and use that to kind of like simulate either one of these scenarios. Then later maybe I could add some like different sprites on top of it to make it look better. And yeah, I tried many variables with this gradient noise shader, but yeah, I don't know. First of all, I was running into some issues with like close colors, so there was this gradient banding or whatever it's called, like this very noticeable steps between the colors, which I thought didn't look quite so nice. And then also, even if I didn't have that issue, I don't know, it just didn't look very nice. Kind of like reminded me of some cheap 90s game, I don't know, where just someone put some very unrelated background on a game and then you have the game on top of that, so it was very noticeable kind of from the actual like roads and stuff like that. So yeah, I didn't like it too much. I also tried to search some inspiration from internet, looking at different kinds of solutions other people have come up with, and those gave me some ideas, but I didn't also really like find a super obvious alternative I could go with. But one thing I wanted to try was replacing the roads with these dotted lines, and while testing it out I actually started to really enjoy the dotted lines outlook. So yeah, I decided I will go with that instead of my original idea of having the lines be kind of like roads you're traveling. So basically with dotted lines it will look more like a treasure map kind of. I don't know, treasure maps don't probably have dotted lines, but yeah, I thought visually it was better looking like this. I decided that at this point it would be easier for me to go with this kind of like parchment map type of thing, so I tried to search some ready-made texture for this and then just add my own noise gradient on top of that, so there's a bit more variance in the colors. But then I remembered with my previous game, Chambers of Devious Design, I did have an issue with a shader like this with older computers. Basically it made the noise look all kinds of funny when it was zoomed in, and I figured I would want to avoid this problem in this one. But then I figured it looks better if I have this seamless texture quite small, and then I can just freely expand that how long I want and how wide I want, so it will look good no matter how tall the map is. So maybe I can have like a super long level in the game or whatever. So yeah, and then I added some borders also and some logic in the code that will automatically expand it based on the number of nodes I have on the map. Later on I might add some kind of like map scenery or some towns under the nodes or something like that, but at this point I figured, yeah, it's good enough for me to move on to something else, so I will leave this to marinate a bit and then adjust later on if needed. Then next I added some small quality of life improvements. So I added this small scaling animation for my dynamic tiles, like the fire for example. So when it spawns in the game now, it will pop up like from really small scale to the actual scale, and it has a small bounce effect at the top. So yeah, I think it looks smoother this way. Then next I had this idea to improve the skill tooltips, and that idea was to add this like small description symbols in the skill tooltips to tell you about like some specific qualities the skill will have. So in the first game, one problem I had was that if a skill was more complex, the description was like reading through a novel kind of. So yeah, for example, I could have like, okay, this skill requires line of sight. You need to be like directly vertical or horizontal line seeing the target. Then it will spawn fires. Well, actually you couldn't do that in number 1, but okay, it will deal a debuff, it will deal this much damage and blah blah blah. So basically these are things that will repeat from skill to skill. So I figured it would be smart to make it more compact. The player probably doesn't want to read it too many times. So if he or she will recognize the symbol, they will immediately know that okay, yeah, this skill will do that and do that. So that was the idea. It took some tinkering, breaking down my original tooltip code a bit and expanding it, but the end result works quite nicely. So these icons are actually automatically filled based on the skills. Like it will detect if the skill has an AoE effect and then automatically show the symbol that will tell that okay, hey, this skill has this much of an AoE effect and so on. Later on I will add more symbols, I think, for different things, but at this point the functionality is there, and yeah, that's enough for now. Then sticking with the tooltips, I needed to have some damage scaling in my skills that I didn't have so far. And on the actual like battle code side, it's very easy. Like, okay, take the physical damage value of a unit and add that to the damage of the skill. Yeah, no issues. But the harder part was to visualize that in the tooltip in a nice way. I mean, I could have it all be text like damage equals like physical damage plus 15 or something like that. But I also wanted to avoid long lines of text, and especially when some languages can be longer than others. So basically I tried different things, but I figured it looked nice when I had this like damage, and then if it scales from some attribute of the character, that will be shown as the symbol, and then if needed some like plus signs or multiply signs to show the like actual damage formula. But this is actually something I would love to hear from you also. Do you think the tooltip I have now for skills, do you think it's easily readable and understandable, like what is going on, or do you see some room for improvement, and if so, what kind of an improvement? Yeah, that's something I would love to hear. And then as the final thing in this devlog, I added the functionality for these special rules that you can have for each fight that can differ per fight. So yeah, basically just these effects that can differ from one fight to another. Now I just added these 2 double moves and double damage for testing purposes. I will add much more later on to add some variants, but these will do fine now just for testing purposes and seeing how it will play out visually. Okay, but hey, that was actually everything I have to show in this devlog. As per usual, I would love to hear from you too. What do you think about all the features I added? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Any improvement ideas? All that stuff, I would love to hear it. But yeah, otherwise, hey, I thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.